everybody would benefit from having better control over their glucose and understanding what makes the spikes. They happen more in diabetics because it's really when the glucose is spiking, and when it's raised for a long period of time, you're going to have the worst effect of that. But if you're someone that's spiking, periodically throughout the day, that's also not going to be good for you.
And as you said that, the impact on the spine across the board can be similar, from various conditions. And I think the effect of after it happens is also similar, right? The ability or lack thereof to be able to do a lot of things.
Yeah, it's in terms of the diagnosis. So if someone comes in with knee pain or hip pain or back pain, you can throw them all in the same bucket for this, and they also have diabetes. In terms of the diagnosis of their problem, the diabetes doesn't really play much of a role in terms of how you would go through working those different problems up. When you start the treatment aspect of it, though, that's where the diabetes becomes more of a
Ah,
factor. Not that it's, it depends on, first of all, are they controlled, are they poorly controlled, all of those things. But you're definitely going to want to be taking that into account as you develop a treatment plan together. Because of the considerations of the blood sugars and what steroids do to those, and sometimes there are other things that you could be injecting if you have to do an injection other than steroids that don't raise the blood sugar. So you
mhm.
might, you might pull that out sooner than you might have otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. I smile or I laugh because I remember when on that sciatica episode that I was telling you about, when I asked the doctor what are the possible, fixes, right, to the problem. And let's start with steroid. Let's go through physical therapy. Most of the time, that takes care of it. And then if it doesn't get better, if it becomes an issue, then we go through the epidural shot. And I was like, hold on, you're talking about the same epidural shot that what my wife got when she went into labor? He goes, yeah. I'm like, as in my spine. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. I will do
So
I will do physical
there,
therapy.
a quick point of order. So he said, yeah, but that's because you're seeing an orthopedist who doesn't really do injections. An epidural for pain is completely different than one for pregnancy. Like
Okay,
they bear very little resemblance. So
okay.
just so you know, and for your audience out there, the an epidural is just a word that means a certain thing. So epi
Ah,
is a Latin prefix that means outside of. Dura is the lining of the nerve root. So an epidural is something where you're putting something on the outside of the nerve roots. When you
got it.
do it in pregnancy, it's a very rough and dirty procedure
Yeah.
where there's no X-ray because obviously you can need X-ray. Yeah, and you're injecting mass amounts of stuff, and you're going midline as an interlam. So it doesn't look,
Good.
it basically doesn't look anything like
Oh, phew.
the way an epidural should look for pain. So just so you know, like
Hey,
it's
I'll,
not that's a question that comes up all the time, as you can imagine, during the day. And it's like, look, yes, it's really not the same. It shares a word and certain parameters,
yeah.
but otherwise they really shouldn't look too
Yeah, my
much the
wife was
same.
laughing really hard because she was like, "Ha! Now we're gonna see how tough you are," because
You're
that stuff is
like, yeah,
not.
yeah, not that tough. No, no, I
It's
don't
like
want to.
I'm
Yeah,
not. I'm not at all. I mean, from
no, thank
from
you.
that
Yeah.
perspective, it's funny. I saw this funny video on Instagram the other day. This woman is laying with her newborn baby, and she's recovering from childbirth and all that, and the husband walks by and he goes, "Finally, now she understands what it feels like to have a cold." I'm like, it's like, dude, you're gonna get in
Yeah,
a lot
exactly.
of trouble, for saying something like that. So let's not to digress, but let's talk about muscles in general. So how does diabetes affect muscles? Weakness, cramps, slow recovery. Are they common for people that have diabetes versus someone who's not diabetic?
Yeah, that probably is right, and that's where there's a again with with diabetes, unfortunately, it's one of these things that kind of scatter shots into everything. So it
Mm,
just makes everything a little bit worse, a little bit harder. Not much goes unscathed with that when the blood sugars are raised for a long time. Again, because of those advanced glycation end products and um, uh, the the lack of vascular flow. There's a bunch of different things that start to happen. But so the way that you and as a stepping back for a moment, when you're thinking of treatment plans for other things, one of the things that you should probably be emphasizing with diabetic patients when they go to their exercise portion of getting better
mm.
is making sure they stay really well hydrated and of course manage the blood sugars well. But one of the things that can happen is you'll be more prone to getting dehydrated, and really need to make sure that you're staying nice and hydrated. That's one of the better ways, obviously also managing your blood sugars well, but it's one of the better ways of preventing the muscle cramps from happening in the first place. But yes, muscle cramps, nerve problems, joint stiffness, all of those things are going to be more common in diabetics. So I was going to say, so actually for acute stuff, back to thinking about when people come into the office with hip, knee, back kinds of things. The way I was answering that was really more about chronic kind of pain.
Mm,
So pain that's lasted more than a few months.
mm.
Once that's happened, it all kind of falls into the same bag. But if someone came in and they had um, you know, a couple weeks of back pain, let's say, that could be a whole host of things from muscle spasms to ligament sprains. And there, if someone had diabetes, I mean, one of the questions you would want to know is how well controlled are your sugars, because that certainly could be playing an oversized role in that kind of a situation.
Okay.
It's once it gets to chronic that you're back to dealing with more structural kinds of things, and then you're back to treating the diabetes in terms of the diagnosis as just as sort of a byproduct, as a not a central feature.
So how do you in your world, what do you define as well controlled, and is it consistent across all specialties, or is it different for for from your focus area versus, let's say, a cardiologist or
Oh,
a dentist or things like that?
I think it's consistent across all
Okay.
specialties, and I would be the first to defer to their endocrinologist or primary care
Okay,
about
got it.
that.
Got it.
But it's uh, with that said, usually patients know if they're controlled or uncontrolled, and usually if they give you a number, if it's way out of whack, if their A1C is something ridiculous, it's pretty, that's pretty easy to read.
Okay.
Whereas if it's close to normal, then you say, okay, that's obviously more reassuring. And within broad swaths for my world, it's more it's not like I'm going to manage their diabetes,
Right,
right?
right.
It's more that we want to make sure that the patient and the patient's other doctors have made the connection between why this is really important.
Mm,
And also, something that I try to do is inspire patients to sort of try to look at, I mean, try to look at the pain that they're coming to see me with as hopefully an opportunity, because once we get it better, which we usually do pretty quickly, once we get that better, then that's really an inflection point that gives us a chance to make some good lifestyle
right.
changes that are going to play a lot of positive downstream effects. One of those, and not a small one, is hopefully going to be on blood sugar management for diabetics and for non-diabetics as well.
Yeah.
It's just starting to take better care of yourself, essentially.
Got it. Now that we have obviously talked about specific body parts and the impact and sort of the big picture, now let's explore management, prevention, and some obviously key techniques. So, what would you say? What are some of the lifestyle changes that somebody could implement, or let's say somebody is suffering through musculoskeletal issues and might have type 2 diabetes, what sort of lifestyle changes would you recommend they consider taking, small and as well as big?
Well, for musculoskeletal stuff, the most important thing that anyone can do, diabetic or not, is going to be exercise, right? It's going to be getting the muscles
Mm,
to be strong and limber in a way that's going to support the joints, the spine, the whatever, so that those things basically don't take the stress of the day.
mm,
For example, you go through life and you're walking. When you have a heel strike, gravity's coming through you no matter what, right? The muscles can either contract and take the pressure off of your knee, let's say, or the muscle can be, a little lazy and not do it or not do it enough. And then gravity's coming either way. So then instead of the muscles taking that pressure is going to be going through the knee. Or, in the back, if you took your spine out of your body
mm.
and you put it on a table and you start putting an axial load on it, you're going to get about 35 pounds of pressure, and then things are going to start to break. Now, you weigh more than 35 pounds. We all weigh more than 35 pounds. The way that we go through the world without our spines breaking is that our muscles attach to the spine to unload it in the same way that the riggings on a sailboat will attach to the mast. Without those riggings, the mast falls over. It can't support its own weight. So the riggings are there to take the pressure off of the mast. Our muscles are there to take the pressure off of the spine. If the muscles are tight, if they're imbalanced, right? If they're not doing what we need them to do, they won't do a good job of unloading the spine. And then we're going to see more deterioration. So back to your question, when people say, "What can I do to prevent these things in particular?" The most, and usually that comes as, "What supplement should I be taking?"
Mm,
And,
mm.
I've done videos on supplements. I take a bunch of supplements, but if the question is, "What's the most important thing I could be doing to protect my back and joints into the future?" It's definitely going to be the right kinds of exercise. And if you said, "Well, what's the second most important thing?" That would definitely be exercise, and the third is still probably
Yeah.
exercise, right? And then, now alongside of that, and especially if we're talking about diabetics, I would throw in weight management.
Okay.
Especially for load bearing joints, definitely having a more targeted body weight is
Mm,
going to see. He's going to let those joints see less stress. But luckily, as you do your exercises, it's going to help you with your weight management anyway. So it's win-win, as we were saying before. And so really it's going to come down to doing the right kinds of exercises. And then you start talking about, well, and with diabetics, of course, also you want to be managing the blood glucose as
right.
well as possible. That goes without saying. And it goes without saying because it's not just about the spine and the joints, but it's about every
Mm,
single aspect of your body. That's going to be, point number one. But luckily, as you do your exercises, it's also going to make it easier to manage your blood glucose. So it all kind of goes synergistically together. And then, there are some supplements that I think are generally good, like curcumin, omega 3s. Um, there's a few others like bromelain that I think, tart cherries, that I think people could be taking. But if you were taking those thinking that that's what's going to save
substitute.
you, and so that you can sit on the couch, then that is a very bad trade-off.
Yeah.
So
It's
ideally you're doing all of it, but if you're going to choose exercise.
Yeah, there's a reason it's called a supplement, not a replacement, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's a good. I never heard
just
that. That's
just
funny. Yeah.
don't
Right.
augment something that you're doing good with that. That's the
Yes.
whole name of the game.